Whoever thought that China was really quiet was wrong. Bombshell news has just broken, and this Thursday, April 23, 2026, the focus is no longer just on the seized ships or the threat of new clashes in Hormuz. The main issue now is something else. The news that China is helping Iran in the field of intelligence, while precision strikes and calculated actions are once again shaking the Gulf. Verified reports indicate that Chinese intelligence is operating against the United States. Now, the effect is not only seen on the military map. It shows in the direct relationship between the Trump administration and Xi Jinping. I'll tell you all about this in a moment, but right now, you'll want to be subscribed to the channel to stay well informed with real-time information at the highest journalistic quality ever seen with the credibility standard of Milson Alves. The strongest thing that came out today in this regard was a report from the Wall Street Journal showing the United States' growing concern about Chinese satellites over the battlefield in the Middle East. According to the report, Washington fears that images and analyses made by Chinese companies are increasing the ability of adversaries, such as Iran, to track military movements, locate sensitive assets, and turn data into practical advantage. This carries even more weight because the article says that a Chinese artificial intelligence company, Mizar Vision, stated that it monitors American military assets, including aircraft carriers and bombers, using satellite-based analysis. When this comes up on the same day that the Gulf is shaken again by new Iranian actions, the situation becomes even more serious. Iran may not just be resisting, it may be receiving intelligence, tracking, and analysis from a much larger apparatus. This concern didn't start today. Reuters had already reported on April 15, based on a Financial Times article, that Iran had acquired a Chinese spy satellite in 2024, which was used to monitor major United States military bases in the Middle East during the current war. According to Reuters, the newspaper cited leaked Iranian military documents, lists of coordinates with timestamps, and images produced before and after drone and missile attacks. Beijing denied it and called the report disinformation, but the main point remained in the news coverage. There is a serious suspicion that the Chinese surveillance apparatus was used to increase the accuracy of the Iranian effort. And it's exactly this suspicion that is once again causing concern now as the Gulf enters another day of tension. At the same time, today's events at sea have given substance to this fear. Reuters reported that oil prices soared after reports of anti-aircraft activity in Tehran and of increased internal tensions between hardliners and moderates within the Iranian regime. The same report said that Iran demonstrated its tighter control over the Strait of Hormuz, with video footage of commandos seizing a large cargo ship. After the collapse of peace talks that Washington had hoped to use to reopen the maritime corridor. At the same time, Donald Trump stated that he ordered the United States Navy to shoot and kill any boat that is threatening the strait. This shows how today's crisis has two layers at the same time, a visible layer with ships, mines, and open threats, and a less visible but perhaps more decisive layer with satellite imagery, monitoring, and target reading. It was exactly this kind of fear that Reuters had already described at the end of February, when Iranian missiles crossed the skies of Gulf nations. And they reinforced the perception that Tehran is able to bring the war right to the doorstep of these governments. The report showed that the shock strengthened regional support for the United States and Israel's campaign, because the Gulf saw in practice that the Iranian regime is capable of turning its threats into real damage. Today, with news about Chinese surveillance and satellite intelligence returning to the spotlight, this fear gains another layer. It's not just the ability to attack, but the possibility of attacking more effectively. And here's where the most sensitive part of this whole story comes in. Modern warfare doesn't just depend on weapons, it depends on information. Whoever knows where the ship is, which base has moved, which runway was used, which battery changed position, and which logistical window became vulnerable already has the advantage. The Wall Street Journal report published today goes exactly in that direction, by saying that The advancement of the Chinese network of commercial satellites with the ability to revisit the same spot several times a day is putting American authorities on alert. When a country like Iran faces naval pressure, blockade, interception of ships, and the need to respond with calculated gestures, having access to this kind of intelligence makes all the difference. China's behavior also draws attention amid this tension. Reuters reported on April 20 that Beijing expressed concern over the forced interception of an Iranian ship by the United States, and it asked the parties to avoid further escalation and create conditions for the resumption of normal transit in Hormuz. The political point here is significant. In public, China speaks of caution and negotiation. But in the news that circulates, what lingers is the sense of indirect support, which is much more useful than a diplomatic statement. Oil bought from Iran, political cover when convenient, and now persistent suspicions of support with images and intelligence. That's why this line causes such a stir in the Gulf. It suggests that Tehran is not acting alone in the most strategic part of the war. And there's another decisive point. Today, Axios highlighted that China has reached this stage of the war with a gigantic oil reserve, estimated by the U.S. Energy Information Administration at nearly 1.4 billion barrels by the end of 2025. This gives it a huge advantage amid the global energy shock. In simple terms, while other nations suffer from the squeeze in Hormuz, Beijing enters more protected, better prepared, and with more breathing room. The result is harsh for the Gulf. The same power that is surrounded by suspicions of having helped Iran with intelligence also emerges as one of the best positioned to weather the energy crisis caused by this instability. In practice, what we see today is a scenario in which Iran uses maritime pressure to show its power. The United States tries to crush the export and circulation capacity of Tehran. It appears in the background as the actor that may be helping the regime to see more, assess better, and get through the chaos with less pain than the others. This explains why precision attacks are so frightening, because they are not seen only as a product of Iranian boldness. They come to be seen as the result of a mechanism of intelligence, imagery, and external support that increases the danger of the regime precisely at a time when the Gulf is trying to avoid an even bigger explosion. In the end, the news that China is providing Iran with something too precious, timely intelligence information, puts the Asian giant on a collision course with the American giant. When a regime under pressure manages to attack with more calculation and keep the Gulf on edge, directly affecting the interests of the United States in the region, the crisis is no longer just a military one with Iran. It becomes a strategic shock that directly involves the possibility of retaliation involving China. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and at the end, check out the comments so you can be even more engaged with the Milson Alves community.